No one expected a broke single father to invite a total stranger into his home, especially not someone who appeared out of nowhere, soaking wet and barely able to speak. But what this man did next would change both of their lives in ways no one could imagine. Jacob Miller was used to tough days. As a single dad raising his 8-year-old son Caleb in a rundown neighborhood on the edge of the city, he knew what it meant to stretch every dollar. He worked 2 jobs, janitor by night, diner cook by day, and still barely made enough to keep food on the table. But one rainy afternoon, as he was picking up Caleb from school, something happened that would test his kindness and rewrite his entire future. They were walking home under a broken umbrella when they noticed her, a young girl, maybe 17, standing alone by a lamppost, drenched and shivering. Her clothes looked expensive but were soaked through, and her expression was lost, frightened even. "Should we help her, Dad?" Caleb asked, tugging on Jacob's sleeve. Jacob hesitated. He didn't have the means to help anyone, not even himself sometimes. But something about the girl's eyes, it reminded him of his late wife. The same kind of vulnerability. "Let's see if she's okay," he said, approaching her carefully. The girl barely responded. She didn't say her name, didn't explain what she was doing in that neighborhood, and didn't even have a phone. All she whispered was, "Can I stay somewhere warm just tonight?" Jacob had every reason to say no. He was poor, he didn't know her, and the world teaches us to be suspicious. But against all logic, he nodded. "We don't have much," he said softly, "but you can stay the night." He gave her his son's room, offered her a towel, a warm meal, leftover stew he'd made 3 nights ago, and let her rest. That night, as he lay awake on the couch, doubts filled his mind. Was she in trouble? Was someone looking for her? Why hadn't she said her name? But deeper than the doubt was something else, a strange feeling in his chest, like maybe, just maybe, he had done something truly good. The next morning, the girl was gone. No note, no thank you, just vanished. All that was left was Caleb's neatly made bed and an expensive gold bracelet on the pillow. Who was this mysterious girl? Why had she left without saying a word? And most of all, how did a bracelet worth thousands end up in the hands of a man who barely had enough money for bread? Before we dive deeper into this journey, take a moment to support this channel. If you enjoy stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from. We love hearing your stories too. Jacob stared at the bracelet in disbelief. It shimmered in the morning light like a piece of treasure dropped from heaven. He picked it up carefully, noticing an engraving on the inside. For see, "Love, Dad." It felt heavy in his palm, not just because of its material, but because of what it might mean. Who leaves behind something so valuable? And more importantly, who exactly had he let into his home? Confused and uneasy, he tucked the bracelet into a drawer and tried to move on. Life didn't allow him much time to dwell on mysteries. Rent was due in a few days, and Caleb needed new shoes. But that week, strange things began happening. First, an envelope arrived at their apartment. No return address. Inside was a stack of grocery store gift cards worth over $200. Jacob blinked, staring at the cards like they might disappear. Maybe someone from church? He wondered aloud, though he hadn't been to church in over a year. Then came a phone call. The diner where he worked called him in with urgent news. Someone had paid off his rent for the next 3 months and left a note simply saying, "Thank you for your kindness." Jacob was stunned. This wasn't luck. Someone was doing this, and in his gut, he knew it all pointed back to the mysterious girl. But why? Why would someone so rich and powerful go out of their way to help a man like him? Meanwhile, Caleb had questions of his own. "Dad, is she a princess?" he asked one night, swinging his legs off the couch. "Only someone with a fortune would leave a bracelet like that, right?" Jacob chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. "Maybe, buddy. But sometimes people are just kind even if they have money." Still, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening. One night, while closing up the diner, a black luxury car pulled up outside. A man in a suit stepped out and walked directly toward him. "Mr. Miller?" the man asked. "I represent the Harrington family." Jacob froze. Everyone in the city knew the Harringtons. They were one of the richest families in the country, owners of billion-dollar tech firms, real estate empires, and philanthropic foundations. "I'm sorry, what?" Jacob asked, his voice unsteady. The man handed him a sealed letter. "Miss Claire Harrington asked me to deliver this personally. She said you helped her when she needed it most. Jacob opened the letter, his hands trembling. Inside was a handwritten note, elegant and precise. Dear Mr. Miller, you didn't know who I was, yet you opened your heart and your home. That night, I had run away from a life that felt suffocating. Expectations, appearances, people pretending to care. But you treated me like a human being, with no agenda, no judgment. I left before I could thank you. I was scared, ashamed, but now I want to make things right. The bracelet was just a token. The real gift is this. Meet me tomorrow, noon, Harrington Tower, Suite 47. Claire Harrington. Jacob couldn't speak. He read the letter 3 times, barely able to comprehend it. Claire Harrington, a millionaire's daughter, had been in his home. She had eaten his leftovers, slept in his son's bed, and cried quietly in the dark while he made her feel safe. And now she wanted to meet again. He looked down at his hands, calloused, stained with grease, and wondered what kind of world he'd stepped into. Was this real? Could someone so rich truly care about someone like him? He didn't have the answer yet, but he was going to find out. The next morning, Jacob stood in front of Harrington Tower, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. The building was massive, glass and steel stretched into the sky like it belonged in another world entirely. He looked down at his worn-out boots and faded shirt, feeling completely out of place. But he clutched the letter in his pocket like it was a golden ticket and told himself he had every right to be there. After all, she had invited him. A receptionist in a sleek gray uniform greeted him with a warm smile, as if she'd been expecting him. Mr. Miller? Miss Harrington is waiting for you. Please, take the elevator to the 47th floor. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. Jacob adjusted his collar nervously, running his fingers through his hair. What was he supposed to say to a millionaire's daughter? What would she expect from him? Gratitude? Silence? Distance? The doors opened with a soft ding, revealing a space unlike anything Jacob had ever seen. It wasn't just rich. It was serene, filled with warm light, minimalist furniture, and large windows that overlooked the city skyline. At the center of it all, sitting on a cream-colored couch, was Claire. She looked different, clean, composed, dressed in elegant simplicity. But her eyes, those same frightened eyes, still held a trace of the girl who had stood in the rain asking for shelter. Mr. Miller, she said, standing to greet him. Call me Jacob, he replied, stunned that someone so powerful would address him with such grace. She motioned for him to sit, and for a moment there was silence. Then Claire exhaled deeply, folding her hands. I'm sorry for leaving without saying goodbye. That night, I'd just run away from a charity gala my father had forced me to attend. Everyone there smiled, complimented my dress, talked about wealth like it was everything. But no one asked how I felt. Not one person. I was tired of being seen as just a rich girl with a fortune. So I ran. Jacob listened without interrupting. Every word she spoke revealed not just privilege, but pain. I didn't know where I was going, she continued. But when I saw you and your son walking, I don't know, something told me to follow. And then you helped me. You didn't know who I was. You didn't ask for anything. You just gave me warmth, safety, a meal. You treated me like a person. No one's done that in a long time. Jacob felt something swell in his chest. He wasn't used to being seen either. Claire stood and walked to a nearby table, returning with a thick envelope. She placed it on the coffee table between them. I know you didn't do it for this, she said, but I want to offer it anyway. It's not charity. It's gratitude. A trust fund set up for Caleb's future. College, health, whatever he needs. I've already spoken with my father's legal team. It's yours if you want it. Jacob stared at the envelope, stunned. I can't accept that, he said at first, shaking his head. You've already done enough. But Claire's voice was firm. You gave me hope when I had none. Please let me do the same for your son. And in that moment, Jacob saw something in her he hadn't expected. Not just wealth, but purpose. And maybe, just maybe, something else was beginning to bloom between them. Jacob left Harrington Tower, feeling like he had stepped out of a dream and into a storybook. The envelope sat in his worn backpack, heavier than anything he had ever carried, because it wasn't just filled with money. It was filled with possibility. That evening, as he walked home with Caleb, He looked down at his son and imagined a future no longer built on struggle, but on hope. He hadn't told Caleb about the fund yet, not because he was hiding it, but because he wanted to be sure this was real. Deep down, he still battled the fear that it might all vanish in a blink. The next few days felt like a blur. Claire kept in touch, texting Jacob with surprising ease and warmth. They started meeting in the park near his apartment. Simple conversations over coffee, where Claire dressed down and blended into the world she had once escaped from. She laughed more, opened up about her dreams, and listened when Jacob spoke about his late wife, about fatherhood, and about the quiet strength it took to survive poverty with dignity. One afternoon, Claire surprised him by bringing Caleb a brand new bicycle. "I know it's a little extravagant," she said, embarrassed, "but I remembered you mentioned he's never had one." Caleb's eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning, and Jacob couldn't find it in himself to protest. Seeing his son smile like that, truly smile, was a kind of wealth no bank account could measure. Still, not everyone around Jacob was so accepting of this sudden connection. His neighbor Maria pulled him aside one evening. "You're a good man, Jacob, but people like her? They don't live in our world. Be careful." Her words echoed in his head. Was he being naive? Was Claire just caught in a phase of rebellion against her rich lifestyle? One that would eventually fade? Then came the dinner. Claire invited Jacob and Caleb to her family's estate for an official dinner with her father, Richard Harrington, a billionaire known for his fierce business sense and icy demeanor. "He wants to meet the man who rescued his daughter," Claire said with a half smile. But Jacob could sense the tension behind her words. The estate was palatial, gates taller than buildings, chandeliers glittering like frozen stars, and staff who looked at Jacob as if he didn't belong. Richard greeted them with a firm handshake and a cold smile. "So you're the man my daughter keeps talking about." Dinner was formal and quiet at first. Richard asked questions that felt more like job interviews, about Jacob's past, his work, his goals. But when Caleb accidentally spilled a glass of water, all eyes turned to him. Jacob reached to clean it, but before he could, Claire knelt beside Caleb and wiped the table, smiling. "It's okay. It's just water." Her father's eyes narrowed. After the meal, Richard pulled Jacob aside. "Let's be honest, Mr. Miller. You seem like a decent man. But this world, it's not for you." Claire is emotional. She doesn't understand the consequences of mixing lives like yours and hers. People will talk. She'll be hurt. And so will you. Jacob didn't flinch. "With all due respect, sir, I think Claire understands more than anyone in this room." There was a long silence between them. Then Richard said something Jacob never expected. "She's never smiled like that before." And in that moment, Jacob realized money builds walls. But kindness breaks them down. After that dinner at the Harrington estate, Jacob found himself at a strange crossroads. Claire kept visiting his neighborhood, always casual, always kind. But there was a tension growing beneath the surface, not between them, but within him. She didn't act like a millionaire's daughter. She didn't flaunt her fortune or speak of charity. But no matter how warm her smile was, Jacob knew the world around them saw something else. A wealthy girl playing in a life she didn't belong to. And he, a single father who had no business being part of that world. Every time they sat on his tattered couch or shared coffee in the small kitchen, Jacob wondered if the line between gratitude and intrusion was getting blurred. One afternoon, as they watched Caleb proudly ride the bicycle Claire had gifted him, Jacob finally voiced what had been weighing on him. "Claire, I appreciate everything you've done for us, truly. But I need to ask, why do you keep coming back?" Claire didn't answer right away. She kept her eyes on Caleb, who was now laughing and racing down the sidewalk. "Because you made me feel safe," she said softly. "You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. You didn't try to fix me. You just gave me space to breathe." Jacob nodded, absorbing her words with care. "And now," he asked gently, "do you feel like you belong in this life?" She turned to face him, her expression sincere. "No, but I don't feel like I belong in mine either. I'm just trying to find the middle." It was honest, vulnerable, and it left Jacob thinking about how many people, rich or poor, were quietly searching for the same thing, a place to feel human again. But life wasn't done testing them. One evening, as Jacob returned from work, he found a sleek black car parked near his apartment. On his doorstep stood Richard Harrington himself, sharp in a navy suit, looking like a man who didn't often visit places like this. "I need a word," he said plainly. Inside, they sat in silence until Richard placed a folder on the table. "This is an offer," he said. "You've proven to be trustworthy. The Harrington Foundation is expanding its inner-city outreach programs. We want someone who understands the community, someone like you. A director's role, full salary, benefits, housing." Jacob blinked in disbelief. "Why me?" Richard leaned forward. "Because you helped my daughter in a way no one else did. And whether I like it or not, she's changed because of it. She's stronger, calmer, more real, and I can't ignore that." Jacob stared at the folder. "There's always a condition with offers like this." Richard hesitated. "You already know. I expect boundaries. I don't want Claire tangled in something that isn't sustainable. You're a good man, Mr. Miller. But the world we live in, it's ruthless. People will twist this story. She'll get hurt, and I won't allow that." Jacob didn't respond right away. He wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of being judged for his bank account. Tired of good intentions being turned into transactions. "I didn't ask for this," Jacob said quietly. "I didn't ask for her to show up at my door. I just did what I hoped someone would have done for my wife if she were lost." Richard stood, adjusting his cuffs. "You don't have to take the offer, but if you do, make sure you take it for the right reasons." He left without another word, leaving behind a folder full of opportunity and a silence that stretched deep into the night. Jacob watched the moonlight hit the cover. He hadn't made a decision, but he knew this. Some riches come in envelopes, others in moments, and not every gift should be accepted. The folder sat unopened on Jacob's kitchen table for 2 full days. Every time he passed it, his eyes lingered. It wasn't just paper. It was a door, one that could lead him and Caleb out of a cycle of struggle that had defined their lives for far too long. A steady job, a safe home, a future that didn't feel like a constant uphill climb. But the voice in his head wouldn't quiet down. What would it cost? Claire didn't mention the offer when she came by that weekend. She helped Caleb with his school project, a papier-mâché volcano, and laughed as the baking soda erupted onto the floor. She acted like nothing had changed, like there wasn't an entire world outside Jacob's front door trying to decide whether he belonged in hers. And Jacob appreciated that more than she knew. He didn't want to talk about contracts or conditions. He wanted to live in the silence between all the expectations. That night, after Caleb had gone to bed, Jacob finally opened the folder. The offer was legitimate. A leadership role in a city outreach program, funded by the Harrington Foundation. A generous salary. A 2-bedroom apartment in a safer part of town. A full scholarship package for Caleb at one of the best schools in the district. It was more than Jacob had ever dreamed of. Not just money, but dignity, recognition, a chance to serve his community and provide for his son without scraping for scraps. But there it was, buried in the fine print, an agreement clause, nothing romantic, nothing directly about Claire, just vague wording. Recipient agrees to maintain the professional integrity of the foundation's public image and affiliations. Jacob felt the weight of every word. He wasn't a fool. He knew what that clause was about. It wasn't business, it was control. A quiet way of saying, "We'll lift you up, but only if you don't get too close to the hand that's feeding you." The next morning, Jacob made his decision. He walked into the Harrington Foundation's downtown office and met with the legal team. He signed a contract, then took out a pen and crossed out the clause. "I'll work for you," he said plainly, "but I won't sell my silence. I won't pretend I didn't meet your daughter, and I won't rewrite my story to fit a cleaner version for your donors." There was a long pause. The room went still. Then one of the lawyers slowly nodded. "We'll remove it." Jacob exhaled. Later that week, Claire stopped by again, this time with a stack of books for Caleb and a pie she had attempted to bake herself, burned around the edges but still warm. As they stood in the kitchen, Jacob leaned against the counter and finally spoke. "I took the job." Claire smiled. "I'm glad. You deserve it." He looked at her, serious. "But I also told your father I'm not hiding anything. I'm proud of the way our lives cross paths." Claire nodded slowly. "So am I." They stood in quiet understanding. No fairy tale, no romance. Just 2 people from opposite worlds who had helped each other become a little more human. And sometimes that was the richest thing of all. The new job brought with it more than just a paycheck. It brought purpose. Jacob stepped into his role at the community outreach center with the same quiet resilience he had used to survive years of hardship. But now, for the first time, he wasn't just surviving. He was building something. He worked with families facing eviction, helped single parents apply for assistance, and ran workshops that gave young people tools to dream bigger. He was no longer just a janitor or a short-order cook. He was a leader in his neighborhood. And every day, as he walked into that building, he carried with him the same mindset that had led him to open his door to Claire. When you're very little, kindness becomes the richest thing you can give. Caleb thrived too. His new school was clean, safe, and filled with possibility. He joined a science club, started playing soccer, and came home every day with stories Jacob had never imagined hearing. "Dad, we're doing a robotics project. I get to build a car." There was a light in his eyes that hadn't been there before, a light that comes from stability, from hope, from knowing the world isn't as small as your block. Claire remained part of their lives, though never too close. She visited the center sometimes, always without an entourage, dressed plainly, asking how she could help. She donated quietly, volunteered on weekends, and never once asked for recognition. Her name was on no banners, and she took no photos. She simply showed up, sleeves rolled up, heart open. One afternoon, as they were preparing the center for a holiday food drive, Claire stood next to Jacob, taping up signs. "Do you ever think about how strange all this is?" she asked, smiling. "I mean, me, the night we met. It feels like it happened in another life." Jacob paused, then nodded. It was another life. We're both different now. And it was true. Claire had returned to her world, but not completely. She was still a Harrington, still part of a family wrapped in wealth and reputation. But she had changed the way she used her fortune. She stepped away from the spotlight, stopped attending galas, and focused instead on helping without being seen. Jacob had heard whispers about the shifts inside the Harrington Foundation. Funding redirected to underfunded schools. Programs started in neighborhoods that had been long ignored. He knew who was behind it, but she never said a word. Months passed. Then one day, Jacob received a handwritten invitation in the mail. It was for an event, not a gala, but a private ceremony announcing the launch of a new program, the Claire Initiative, a grant designed to support everyday heroes, teachers, social workers, single parents, people who made a difference in small, quiet ways. The event would be small, no press, no photographers. The note at the bottom simply read, "You taught me that the greatest riches are found in acts of compassion." I just gave it a name. Jacob read it twice, smiled, and tucked it into his coat pocket. That evening, as he and Caleb walked home under a soft winter sky, snowflakes just beginning to fall, Caleb asked, "Dad, do you think we're rich now?" Jacob looked around. The buildings were still old. Their apartment was still small, but his heart felt full. "We are," he said, "just not in the way most people think." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, share this video, and tell us in the comments, what part of this journey moved you the most? There's another story waiting for you, and it might just change the way you see the world. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.